I just returned from my lunch break, and I was on the shop floor at Fortnum and Mason. It was known as Queen's Grocer, and the clients were very rich and very famous. I was 17 years old and loved being there in the center of the universe, in London, at the end of the 60s. I remember my pal Murph from the wine department rushing up to tell me something big was happening in Savile Row. Among the bespoke tailors and West End Central Police Station, the Beatles had taken over number 3 as their headquarters. Murph heard that the Beatles were playing in the street. I didn't hesitate. I bolted downstairs, changed out of my tailcoat, and ran the 300 yards to Savile Row. As soon as I crossed Piccadilly and into Burlington Gardens, the heart of Mayfair, I could hear it. Get back. As we turned into Savile Row, it was clear that the music was coming from the roof, not the street. It was disappointing we couldn't see them, but then we set about trying to make that right. At this point, there were a couple of people outside trying to get in and being stopped by someone at the door. Of course, I informed them that we were from Fortnum and Mason and had been asked to find out what everyone wanted for lunch. It must have seemed plausible enough, so he asked us to come in and wait in the foyer. We waited for about 5 tantalizing minutes with the now muffled sound of Beatles music in our ears. He was quite nice to us when he came back, quite apologetic when he told us he couldn't find anyone who knew anything about the lunch arrangements. We were out, and we had to try to find another way of getting a vantage point. It was hopeless. There was no way to get through the adjoining buildings, up 4 floors and onto a roof. We had to make our way back across the street and listen to what was left of the show. It had been worth the attempt, but we missed much of the music, which was quite loud and clear outside. Looking back, it's probably surprising there weren't more people there. It would cause pandemonium today. Sure, there were young people who paused for a minute or two, forlornly looking upwards, but there were also many older, pompous military types who seemed to be outraged by the disturbance. I remember that the Beatles sounded great. What a terrific live band they were. For the few songs I heard clearly, Billy Preston was making quite a contribution too. Maybe I was a little disappointed that there were a couple of songs I hadn't heard before, which didn't blow me away. I've since learned that they were One After 909 and Dig a Pony. After a while, a black police van turned up, a few coppers got out of the back, moved into the building. It was clear that the show would soon be over. The show ended as it started with Get Back, which we hadn't heard properly earlier. It was a great end to this short performance. We had no idea it would be the last song ever performed by the Beatles. I feel privileged to have been there at the time. Footnote, I legged it back to work expecting to be confronted by my boss and fired. No one noticed I was gone. But when he sent me this story, remember, this is the friend of a friend of a friend. At the end of his email conveying this story, he said, oh, by the way, my wife is one of the girls chasing the Beatles at Hard Day's Night. And this became the greatest twofer I could possibly imagine.
Wow.
When Lynn and I went to England a couple of years ago, we met that singer again, I went to 3 Savile Row. I looked up at this, and I'm not ashamed to say, I had massive tears in my eyes.